Hello and welcome to rounds 13, 14 and 15 of the GT Cup here at a very wet and windy Snetterton. Part of the format of the GT Cup means that pro drivers also get the opportunity to race in the season. I caught up with some of our pro drivers to see just what they make of the GT Cup.
Well, I'm here primarily to help Guy, bring him along in his career and try and make him quicker around the track, and that involves many things, just being there on the radio, being a bit of advice for him, someone to turn to, and then in between races looking at the data, the video, analysing where we can improve him really, because these guys such as Guy started racing very late in life compared to me, and are new to sport generally, and there's so much that they can learn through being with someone like me who's been around here for quite a while.
Okay, Darren, so obviously you're having a really good season. How has Adam helped you so far?
Yeah, massively. So having the pro here that sets the time for us and sits down with us and talks us through where them little final bits are really helps. And having that confidence that they've done it before. Yeah, so really helps.
And Adam, what's your words of wisdom today for Darren going out potentially in the wet weather conditions?
Make me look good, so don't forget about that. No, it's just if it's wet, you just have to, it's more the puddles when it's really wet, like it was on Friday. I think that a month's rain in a day, so it's standing water is the most dangerous thing because the car can aquaplane, and it doesn't really matter, how much experience you have at that point. So just keep an eye out for the puddles. Sometimes there's wet lines where you have to drive wider in the corner to find the grip. Just these things basically to try and point them out.
So you guys have been doing really well so far this season. Is that something that you're progressing every time, looking at data and going through it with the team?
Yeah, we never really stop. We always work. It doesn't matter how good the last race was. The next one could be bloody awful. So we've got to make sure that we work hard at it all the time to just try and refine it as best as we can, get the most out of the car. The team do a great job with the car, and we're always working with them to get the setup right as well. Not just for me, but for Paul. Because if the setup's a bit too edgy, so it's very quick but a bit risky, then if Paul's not comfortable, he won't go quick, and then the race won't be a good result. So we always set the car up a little bit more biased towards Paul and make sure that he's confident in the car, and then I drive around it as best as I can in the race. So it works really well. We have a good time doing it. So.
And how does it compare to other championships you've raced in? Is this Pro-Am split something that we see quite a lot in other motorsport championships?
It is. It's building more and more. It's over the last sort of 5-10 years, there's a lot more of it really, and I think it's a good way forward, because for guys to be able to afford to do this, they're normally a bit later in life and they start racing quite late. So to try and get right on the pace, when you've started late, is quite hard. So a lot of the guys are employing instructors and coaches and guides to drive with them and sort of help bring them on more quickly.
Time now for the first round of the weekend, the 50-minute pit stop race. Changeable weather conditions made for a really challenging qualifying, and it looks like it'll be a super exciting race. Here's Ben with the grid.
Thanks, Livia. Well, it is seasonally freezing mid-July at Snetterton, but the action on track should be red hot as the huge field, as ever in the GT Cup Championship, sets off on its formation lap. Let's have a look at how they line up then in full. Heading the grid then, it's David Fairbrother, alongside him Graham Davidson, then Phil Bergen and Darren Nelson, Jordan Witt and Wayne Mars. Next along, Richard Chamberlain has got plenty to do from 10th on the grid, and Rob Gaffney well up in 11th place, just clear of John Saunders. Still they keep coming, and watch for Phil Glue, and he takes over from Martin Johnson in the second half of the race. As they come out of Murray's, this is the longer race of the weekend, the pit stop race, and away we go. It's David Fairbrother who streaks into the early advantage as they hurtle towards Richards for the first time. They all jostle for position, but they're cleanly through. You just got a glimpse there of Paul Bailey in the field. So looking to make progress is James Webb in his BMW, one of the preeminent drivers in the GTB group, as Davidson runs wide in the Noble, challenging Fairbrother, and that gives Darren Nelson opportunity in the Ferrari to begin to challenge as the field safely negotiating the Montreal hairpin, already arrive into the left-hander apartment. There is the challenge between the Ferrari and the Noble. Then it's back to Phil Bergen in the Audi. Phil, magnificent sight as always, and so many different marks represented. Porsche, Noble, Ferrari, make that Porsche, Ferrari, Noble, as through goes Darren Nelson at Hamilton. Great move on Graham Davidson in these early stages. Also, there is Phil Bergen in the Audi. Then we have got Wayne Mars in close pursuit in one of the GTC Group Ferraris. Marcus Hogarth and Jordan Witt also doing battle. Rob Gaffney, it is in the Ginetta just behind them. Down the Bentley straight, and Darren Nelson looking to challenge, and indeed does so to the inside of David Fairbrother. So it's Nelson who takes the advantage, as we were expected in this dry race. The wet qualifying somewhat shaking up the grid, so it's now the GTO Group Ferrari of Darren Nelson ahead of the GTB Group Ferrari, but that may change because Graham Davidson, the Noble, looking to challenge into Coram Curve. In fact, he makes the move stick well before they arrive at the apex, and immediately Fairbrother pressurised and passed by Bergen, but Bergen doing very, very well to get the car stopped at Murray's. At the moment it looks like he was going to run on the same going for Webb, and whenever you look through the field there are some lovely battles beginning to form up. Is always the joy. There was Martin Johnson's Aston Martin towards the rear of the pack. So into Riches once more, and there comes Richard Chamberlain, the Porsche. So Chamberlain, who started down in 10th position, already making fantastic progress. He sides past Hogarth as they come out of Riches on towards the Montreal hairpin. Next to challenge is another Ferrari, that is the white and green car of Wayne Mars. He's in pursuit of the black Alex Porsche of David Fairbrother through Palmer. Still, Fairbrother has the advantage over Mars. How long that's going to last for, we will find out in due course. While battles to be found throughout the field, this is the beauty of the way that the group system works in the GT Cup Championship, is that the balance of performance within each group is very evenly matched, and that's why you have these large packs of cars dicing as the race unfolds. But now Darren Nelson, our race leader, has got his mirrors full here of the Noble of Graham Davidson. Then we have got Phil Bergen in the Audi, and Phil has been quick throughout the course of the season, but he's been very consistent in the past couple of rounds, and that is making him a potent threat for race wins. Meanwhile, there is Rob Gaffney, and he has got Tom Hibbert just in behind him. There's Hibbert, the white 91 Ginetta. And the change has already happened between Chamberlain and Wayne Mars. Richard Chamberlain able to extend his right foot onto the accelerator, power past Mars down the Bentley straight through the bomb hole. The agility of the Ferrari may allow it to close back onto the tail of Chamberlain, but it doesn't quite happen as they hurtle around Coram and then dart on to the brakes, flick through Morris. Just a little bit of a ride of the curb, this leading trio of cars, before they pick up the pace over the start and finish line on towards Riches. And look at the progress of Richard Chamberlain. He is gapping that group behind. Oh, and Tom Hibbert in all manner of trouble at Murray's and enters the corner backwards. There is Rob Gaffney then, to the four of the GTA group. Gaffney, as always, showing so strongly. And he has got Kevin Riley just behind him in the Lotus Evora. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, this leading quartet still converging on each other as they head down the Bentley straight. Headlights ablaze from race leader Darren Nelson. Don't forget, this is the mandatory pit stop race, so they do have the chance of strategy to play its part as Paul Bailey looks to the inside of Wayne Mars. Then it's Marcus Hogarth and Jordan Witt, and the pair of them right up there in the GTC group as they chase down Wayne Mars. Meanwhile, two pugilistic Porsches, that's Colin Payton just clear of Mike Seller. Then we've got BMW and the Ginetta, Rob Gaffney just in behind. Lights ablaze from Riley's Evora, and the change as Chamberlain is up ahead of Phil Bergen and Paul Bailey clear of Wayne Mars as well. This is the battle then for second in the GTC group. They're both in pursuit of Wayne Mars, Marcus Hogarth, and then the black Porsche of Jordan Witt. And Witt we have seen before in this championship in his Chevron, but going very nicely indeed in the Porsche as they come over the crest in the road along the centre straight, and now looking to challenge into Riches. Just needs to balance the Porsche, which he does with aplomb. Meanwhile, we have got Michael Simmons in the BMW under pressure from Rob Gaffney. So they've just been dropped a little bit by the two Porsches running ahead of them a moment ago. Now we've got this lead intro then. This battle for fourth is Phil Bergen doing a fine job of withstanding the pressure from Paul Bailey. Michael Simmons likewise a driver with significant experience in the GT Cup Championship, therefore not inclined to make Rob Gaffney's life any easier than it has to be. Still, Jordan Witt inspects the rear spoiler of Marcus Hogarth's car. Hogarth in the Ferrari doing what he needs to do, which is just stick to the racing line. They've got Wayne Mars, the group leader, just up ahead of them. There is Mars running behind Paul Bailey as Bailey gets the power down nice and early down the Bentley straight. Meanwhile, what about Richard Chamberlain? He looks to try and challenge Graham Davison, the Noble, and Chamberlain thinks about the move. The camera angle somewhat foreshortening. I'm not sure that that was ever really on for Richard Chamberlain, but at least he gave it a good go. Then come out of Brundle and Nelson into the bomb hole, ride the camber at the right-hander. A bit of a puff of smoke there from the Noble of Graham Davidson into Coram. I hope that was just a little bit of overspill or something as he hurtles through Coram. Nonetheless, Chamberlain poised to challenge, but he can't do it at Murray's. Instead, the pair of them pick up the pace as they reel off another lap in pursuit of the race leader, Darren Nelson. So it's Nelson who leads in the early stage of the first race of the weekend, and now up into second place it's Richard Chamberlain, who's just had a change to the lead in the GTC group as Jordan Witt has moved clear of both Wayne Mars and Marcus Hogarth. It appears as if Mars is possibly sporting a souvenir of that pass. Meanwhile, David Fairbrother under pressure from Guy Real, and wherever you look in the pack there are passes underway. Mick Mercer looking to try and find his way past the Ginetta of Ruben Anakashayan. He can't do it as the front splitter skitters against the track surface for Mick Mercer. Meanwhile, Webb and John Saunders continue to battle, both of them well up in their respective groups, as David Fairbrother and Guy Real absolutely nothing to choose between the pair of the Porsches. And they are class rivals of Webb and Saunders, as here is the overall race leader Darren Nelson, but under real pressure now from Richard Chamberlain. And Chamberlain looks to apply the pressures coming out of Oggies, and he forces Nelson to take that defensive line into Williams. Now that may hurt Nelson coming onto the Bentley straight, and Nelson hesitates as well, possibly a bit late on the gear change, and that is all the invitation that Richard Chamberlain needed to power past. And Darren Nelson will be kicking himself. There's a waved yellow flag as well. Chamberlain made that move just before the waved yellow, because otherwise I think Nelson would have been able to hold on down the Bentley straight. As it is, Richard Chamberlain now leads. Darren Nelson slips back into second as we are moments away from the pit window opening. This is the 50-minute pit stop race for the weekend. We've got the two 20-minute sprint races to come as Chamberlain kicks out the tail of the Porsche as he gets out of Murray's, sprints along the centre straight and into the pit lane. Now comes Darren Nelson. So Nelson ducks in right at the opening of the pit window as Martin Johnson goes a lap down to Chamberlain. Now what can Chamberlain do during this pit cycle? Also still going strongly is Graham Davidson as the mechanics are hard at work in the pits. James Greenway about to take over. Likewise, Kevin Riley hands over to Gareth Downing. Adam Carroll being strapped into the cockpit of the FF Corse Ferrari. As they emerge from the pits, it's James Greenway who peels out in the Porsche. Now he has been fed out into some clear air. Quite how that will relate to his group rivals we'll find out in due course, as now Adam Carroll gets the thumbs up. Also well on his way is Andy Schultz. Now that could be a really intriguing battle here between Carroll and Schultz. There isn't an awful lot of ground between the Ferrari and the Aston Martin. We've also got Tom Ingram emerging from the pits in the Ferrari that he has just taken over from Marcus Hogarth, and also Charles Hollings in for Wayne Mars. All the while though, in the GTC group, Jordan Witt continues. He is going to do the race alone, and therefore he's really got the luxury of picking the perfect moment to make his pit stop. As now in is our race leader Richard Chamberlain. Now how quickly can the team service the Porsche getting back out. It's very difficult to gain time through the pit stops in the GT Cup Championship. It's very easy to lose it, however. But that was a seamless pit stop for Chamberlain. The Porsche fires up with no drama, and he emerges into splendid isolation. Now, is that isolation a long way ahead of or behind Adam Carroll and Andy Schultz? Through Riches goes Chamberlain. He certainly has got plenty of space around him to defend. He misses the braking zone for Montreal slightly. Shows just how quickly that he can go out of the tyres when he's sitting stationary in the pits for a few moments. Now, as the grip begins to come back, Chamberlain gets down to the pace, and now here is Adam Carroll. So that is a big advantage for Richard Chamberlain. And Carroll is going to try and chase down. Now, what can he do about it? As he drives towards the welcoming embrace of Snetterton Spooky Tree for circumnavigating the Montreal hairpin. The same going for Andy Schultz in the Aston Martin. Here is Phil Bergen in the Audi. And Bergen emerges just into the path of Tom Ingram and Charles Hollings. So he's not for the lead of the race here, Phil Bergen, but he is certainly going to be in for a battle over the closing stages as Ingram looks every which way to try and challenge into the Montreal hairpin. This is the drive they're all trying to chase, though. GTC Group leader Jordan Witt. And here is the head of the GTB Group. BMW has overhauled the Porsches who made the slightly sprightlier start to the race. Here is a challenge. Charles Hollings looks to the outside of Tom Ingram. They've still got Phil Bergen ahead of them. Don't forget, Bergen running in the GTO group, whereas the two Ferraris are both GTC group runners. Ex-F3 racer Charles Hollings trying to overhaul Ingram, but Ingram just sticking to the racing line. He's going to make Charles Hollings do all the hard work. Where, if at all, can Hollings fashion the opportunity? They've still got plenty of race remaining. Down the Bentley straight, then headlights ablaze from Bergen. He can enjoy the show going on behind, as now Charles Hollings really begins to apply the pressure through Brunton Nelson onto the bomb hole, which is pretty much the only unchanged corner here at Snetterton, following its redesign several seasons ago. Coram Curve, which used to be open and fast, now is very fast on the way in, but then really tightens and then twists the knife into the braking zone for Murrayton. That's where Charles Hollings goes to the move to the inside of Tom Ingram. Ingram looks to fight back immediately on the exit, though, as the pair of them sprint side by side along the centre straight. And Ingram regains the place. That was beautifully opportunistic driving from Charles Hollings, but it wasn't quite rewarded in the way that it could have been. And so the pair of them head around Riches and on towards braking zone for Montreal. Meanwhile, there is Andy Roby. Andy just outside the top 15, but having a very solid race nonetheless. Here is our race leader, but look how quickly he's been caught by Adam Carroll, and Carroll is absolutely flying at the moment. The former GP2 race winner, former A1 GP race winner, Adam Carroll, in pursuit of Richard Chamberlain, looking to challenge into the Montreal hairpin. He can't quite do it. Carroll, who was so spectacular at the old Snetterton in his British Formula 3 days, so certainly has always gone well out, and he has rapidly reeled in Richard Chamberlain. He is something like 4 seconds lap quicker than Chamberlain during this phase of the race. As a spin for Tom Hibbert. Hibbert having one of those days, but of course it's one thing to catch the car in front, it's quite another to find a way past, particularly in these very rapid GT cars. The corners do arrive thick and fast here on the Snetterton 300 circuit. Therefore, Carroll's going to have to pick his moment, but is it going to be into Williams? Yes, it is. In almost reverse of the move that gave Richard Chamberlain the lead of the race over the Ferrari of Darren Nelson and Adam Carroll. It's now Carroll who regains the advantage as we head towards the closing stages, and there looming in the background you can see in third place is Andy Schultz. So Schultz may also just have enough time left in the race to be able to take a shot at Richard Chamberlain. It's been a fine performance nonetheless, of course, from Chamberlain, starting from that relatively lowly 10th position on the grid. So through Coram Curve, and new race leader Adam Carroll. Carroll picks up the throttle, coming out of Murray's. And then splits along the centre straight. None of that reeled off. There is Phil Bergen. Then we've got heat haze shimmering as still Tom Ingram and Charles Hollings do battle. They are fighting for second and third in the GTC group. That's being led by Jordan Witt. But this is really where the very, very intense and close on-track action is to be found, as the pair of them negotiate corner and curve. They're also fighting for 6th and 7th place in the race overall, as Hollings looks to repeat the move a couple of laps ago. Can't quite find a way past, however, so they remain as they were. Here is our GTA group leader Rob Gaffney, and as ever Gaffney has been the class of the group. Well clearing GTB its web, as he has been really throughout the second half of the race. GTC, of course, it's Jordan Witt, and here is our race leader Adam Carroll, and Carroll just a couple of corners from home now. It's been an absolutely masterful performance during his stint, and up in second place there was a quick glimpse of Andy Schultz, so he has also found a way around Richard Chamberlain, but it's in to Murray's for the final time, and it's going to be victory in the first race of the weekend in the GT Cup Championship at Snetterton for Darren Nelson and Adam Carroll. The checker flag goes out and they take the win, with second place going to Paul Bailey and Andy Schultz, and a fine third for Richard Chamberlain. Thoroughly entertaining race, dicing going all the way through to the flag. Let's have a look then at the results. So Nelson and Carroll win it from Bailey and Schultz, and then Chamberlain. GTC group honours for Jordan Witt, and then Charles Hollings did find a way around Tom Ingram, and 14th, and GTA honours for Rob Gaffney, head of Andy Roby, who was second in group. So applause and on to the top step of the rostrum for Darren Nelson and Adam Carroll.
Well, that was a truly fantastic race, as ever GT Cup race like that.
Okay, congratulations guys, that was quite a dramatic end to the race for you.
Absolutely, yeah. It was quite dramatic all the way through, but yeah, it was a real fun race. Really enjoyed it.
And how did you find it?
It was good. Well, we won in the end, which was the main thing, but still close enough and ended up pretty tough in the end. We had a couple of little problems with the car, with the electronics, but thankfully it stayed together and we were able to keep it in the lead and bring it home for the win.
It was a good kind of race. We had quite a big pit stop deficit, so we knew we had to kind of make it make the most of it going early on, which we did. We got a good lead and just tried to extend it as much as we could, and luckily just came out ahead of the Phil Glue and Martin Johnson, which that was the main game.
I made a few mistakes on the first lap, lost a load of places, managed to make up 3 during my the first stint before the pit window, and then from there we were just trying to maintain the gap. That was it really.
Real surprise this weekend. At the start of the weekend it was going horrendous, so to have a win is fantastic. I've got to say a big thank you to my brother for all the effort he put in to get the car here this weekend. I mean, and for not even to race this weekend. So, it's really down to him that we're on the podium today.
Well, it's been pretty changeable weather conditions here at Snetterton, and the big question is whether the next couple of rounds will be declared wet or dry. I caught up with the team boss for TF Sport to find out just what challenges a team faces when the weather changes. So Tom, rain is forecasted today. How is that going to complicate your day as a team boss?
Well, it depends. If it's going to go from dry to wet just before the race, then it makes it very complicated. If we have a bit of forewarning, then it makes it a little bit easier. So we basically just have to get everything ready, slicks, wets, and wait until the last minute to make a decision.
And at what point do you make that decision to change onto the wet tyres? Is it once there's actually rain? Would you ever go out on slicks in the rain, or do you change it really quickly?
It's a fine line, because if it is dry and only spitting, you normally get away with slicks once you get some temperature into them. Obviously if it's wet and there's puddles down, you have to be on a wet tyre, but like I said, just the last minute generally.
And what different challenges do the drivers face when they're driving in the wet conditions?
Obviously, again, depends how wet it is. If there's a lot of puddles down, they suffer with aquaplaning a lot. If it's just an averagely wet British day, it's just a very different style. You have to be a lot smoother with your right foot, stop the wheels spinning. and the lines are slightly different as well. The trickiest bit for the driver, if it goes from wet to dry or dry to wet mid-race, then it's obviously they have to adapt quite quickly.
Okay, so obviously you're racing with 2 cars as your team boss capacity. Will it be the same setup for both cars, or do you change it depending on the drivers?
Both our cars are slightly different. We've got GT4 car and a GT3 car. Generally, again, if it is very wet, we normally soften the suspension off to give them a bit more of a fighting chance. But in a short race like we've got this today, we'll normally just literally put the wets on and send them out.
Time now for the first of the 2 sprint races here at Snetterton. The rain's coming down, which should make for a pretty challenging race for all our drivers. Here's Ben with the grid.
Thanks, Olivia. Well, the worst thing that can happen for any driver is for it to start raining as you are just about to go out and race, because it makes the call on setup and tyres a last minute and slightly scrambled one. This is how they line up, however, with Phil Bergen and Darren Nelson on the front row. Then it's Paul Bailey and Richard Chamberlain on row 2. Further back, watch the progress of John Saunders and Rob Gaffney. They could fly if the rain worsens. And then at the very back of the field, it's Martin Johnson and Andy Roby who complete the field.
Tom, we had a conversation before about which tyres you're going to use because of the weather. Which did you go with in the end?
Well, strangely enough, wet, because it's raining. No, it was a bit touch and go to start with. It was only kind of lightly kind of showering a little bit, but just before the race it started to rain a bit heavier. So, yes, it was 100% wet, which was the right choice.
Well, certainly the weather and the granite-hued sky suggests that it's only going to get wetter as the race unfolds. But for now, we get underway, and it's Phil Bergen from pole who leads the charge up towards Riches, with Darren Nelson then challenging around the outside and swooping through to take the advantage. So Darren Nelson leading the way through the first turn. A brave negotiation of Riches for Nelson, and he is streaking clear as the field pick their way through these somewhat treacherous early stages. So it's Nelson from Bergen, then it's Jordan Witt who's up into 3rd position, and then it was Gareth Downing in the Evora who was looking to poke through into 4th, as behind others look and scramble for ground, including Abby Eaton in the purple BMW. As Paul Bailey comes under pressure from Richard Chamberlain. Both of those drivers got an awful lot of power at their disposal, and both of them having to be very educated with the application of the right foot. Meanwhile, Phil Bergen coming under significant pressure now from Jordan Witt, and Bergen runs a little bit wide coming out to Hamilton. That's the opening for Witt, and Witt powers through up into 2nd place, and there is Gareth Downing in the Evora looking to also challenge and move through into 3rd if he possibly can, as they arrive into Williams and head down the Bentley straight. As Downing elbows side the Audi, Bergen just runs over the curb, struggles to apply the throttle as a result. Meanwhile, look at the start that Darren Nelson's had. Of course, he has the benefit of a completely clear windscreen. The rest of them, to an extent, are hurtling through the spray as they're 3 wide, nonetheless, on the brakes into Brundle. Now, how does that all shake itself out? The answer is that Paul Bailey has emerged up into 3rd. Bergen and Downing still battling, as are Richard Chamberlain and Wayne Mars. They remain side by side into the bomb hole. Brilliant racing this in the most difficult imaginable conditions, as James Greenway in the black Porsche also trying to join in the leading Joe, somewhat checked out, but through Coram Curve comes this horde. It's now the turn of Chamberlain to begin to negotiate the traffic. Phil Bergen beginning to act a little bit as the cork in the bottle, as across the line comes Darren Nelson. The rain is significantly heavier than it was just a few moments ago at the very start of the race. 2nd place for Jordan Witt. 3rd then is Paul Bailey. 4th, Richard Chamberlain. And then we have got the rest of them all jostling for position. Wayne Mars looking to challenge Phil Bergen. Of course, in inclement weather, the balance of performance that delineates each of the groups becomes a little bit blurred in and amongst each of the groups, which is why we've got cars from the GTB and GCC groups right up there front of the field. Rob Gaffney is who remains to the fore of GTA, of course. So now Wayne Mars looks to challenge Phil Bergen. The leader, there he is. Darren Nelson has got Jordan Witt just beginning to try and chase him down. As James Greenway looks to think about lining up a move on Wayne Mars in the white and green Ferrari. The Ferrari 458, however, has got a reputation as being a beautifully balanced car in wet conditions. Just the way that the weight is distributed around the vehicle makes it a very predictable car to handle in difficult conditions. It's one of the reasons why it's so popular. The Porsche, if you get it working, can be even more forgiving. Has a great deal of mechanical traction, but can also catch you unawares. Meanwhile, Richard Chamberlain closing up onto Paul Bailey. Then we've got Gareth Downing, who heads this pack. The spray now really beginning to linger over the Bentley straight as they flick their way through Brundle and Nelson. Just looking to pounce, accelerating to the inside. Can he squeeze through? No, he can't. No way through for Wayne Mars. Phil Bergen in the Audi, just sticking to the racing line. He's making Mars do the hard work, try and find a way around him. If you are watching from abroad, welcome to the United Kingdom. In the last weekend of July is a horribly wet day here at Snetterton, pretty chilly as well, as now the battle for the lead is just beginning to come together. Darren Nelson's been caught by the consistency of Jordan Whitten. This is now where the pressure really starts to kick in for Darren Nelson, because in the early stages he was able just to sprint clear and essentially run his own race. He's now having the pace dictated to an extent through the progress of Jordan Whitt behind him. It just makes it a little bit harder to manage. Meanwhile, Wayne Mars in the white Ferrari up behind the blue Audi of Phil Bergen. Bergen just finding the wet line there to the outside of the boggies. That means there's a little bit more traction and grip, and it really pays off for Bergen. He does the same at Williams, and that's really nice wet weather driving from Phil Bergen. Great defensive stuff, as he just found that traction away from the conventional racing line, and that's what gave him the opportunity to carry that momentum down the Bentley straight. The two leaders beginning to run closer still. Now Jordan Whitt, one would sense, is beginning to move in for the kill. And Whitt, a little bit sideways coming out of corner. He's brave into Murray's, but he makes the move. Brilliant stuff there from Jordan Whitt. The car was absolutely dancing on the razor's edge of adhesion, but Jordan Whitt found the traction, found the grip, and has powered past and into the lead of the race. Now, has Darren Nelson got anything by way of a response? Fortunately for Mike Seller, that's much you'd rather keep in the closet. He has a quick spin as picking his way through the murk. There is Tom Webb. Here is our GTA group leader, Rob Gaffney. So Gaffney mixing it with some of the GTB group cars. There is Abby Eaton as well. She is showing strongly just ahead of this scrap, which is for lower reaches of the top 10. Such difficult conditions. The drivers on a long lap, like the Snetterton 300, really just have to take it corner by corner, particularly in the event of limited visibility. None of this, of course, is of any concern for the race leader, Jordan Whitt. As again, he is just prepared to put the car on that knife edge time and time again. It really is paying off for him, as Rob Gaffney closes up behind Webb's BMW as he exits Hamilton. A pair of them get on the brakes for Boggies, and then it's the short squirt on towards Williams, and Gaffney looks to line up a move to the inside, and he goes through. Great stuff there from Rob Gaffney. He gains the place. Will he be able to hold off the BMW down the Bentley straight? That is another question altogether. Meanwhile, John Saunders is making fantastic progress, and he eases past Phil Bergen. Saunders, who's always been something of a stalwart competitor in the GT Cup Championship, always goes well in the wet. Experienced competitor and a driver who just knows where to find the grip, and he takes full advantage of it. So Saunders gains the place, moves up into 7th. He remains 2nd in the GTB group, and that's Darren Nelson in trouble. So Nelson hits trouble late on, and that is going to give Richard Chamberlain the opportunity to close the gap between the pair of them. This, the fight then, which has suddenly been initiated for 2nd and 3rd place, and Richard Chamberlain has got the confidence, has got the rhythm. Darren Nelson busy gathering it all up, and he's a little bit tighter into Brundle. than maybe he would have liked. Runs wide as a result on the Exeter Nelson, and that is 2 mistakes in 3 corners for Darren Nelson, and that's sometimes the way it goes in motor racing. It means that Richard Chamberlain moves up into 2nd place. Nelson, however, still retains 3rd place, as now heading into Murray's for the final time. It's Jordan Witt. It's been an absolutely magnificent performance in the most difficult and trying of conditions for Jordan Witt, and he is rewarded with the checkered flag and victory in the sporting sprint race here in the GT Cup Championship at Snetterton, with 2nd place going to Richard Chamberlain and Darren Nelson completing the podium. So there we see it. Jordan Witt wins the race and the GTC group from GTO winner Richard Chamberlain. GTB honours going the way of James Greenway, and then Rob Gaffney once more to the fore of the GTA group. An excellent 14th for him, just clear of Tom Hibbert and Andy Roby. Well, despite the difficult weather, very few retirements along the way. It shows the driving standard in the GT Cup Championship, as 4 very happy group winners take to the podium. Brigworld's sheltered from the rain.
Did you enjoy the race? How were the conditions out? It looked pretty hairy, actually.
It was fairly hairy, actually. Towards the end, the standing walls was really tricky down the back straight, so I was thankful for a few cars that were in front of me to make a few tyre tracks, to be honest.
Will you be doing much changes to the setup before the next race?
Absolutely none. That was always going to be our setup, whether it was rain or shine. All we do is disconnect the rear bar, and other than that, everything's perfect.
Yeah, it was a hard race. Didn't help at the end of the race. We actually lost 2nd gear, so we're struggling with the gears. But no, obviously we built up a lead early on, and that's the main thing we need to do. We need to go out there and keep winning and try and people out the championship.
Time now for the final GT Cup round of the weekend here at Snetterton. It's another wet race, this time with Darren Nelson on pole. Here's Ben with the grid.
Thanks very much, Olivia. So it is Darren Nelson who shares the front row with Jordan Witt as they ease away on their formation lap ahead, of course, of the rolling start. Once more, tricky conditions for the drivers, because not only is it wet, but it is chilly. It's going to take some time to get some heat into the Pirellis. So Nelson and Witt the front row, then it's Richard Chamberlain and Wayne Mars on row 2 from Paul Bailey and David Fairbrother. Rob Gaffney from the 8th row has been the star of GTA this weekend, but he has got Tom Hibbert just ahead of him. As it is once more Martin Johnson who completes the field. Pace car about to peel off, and the open sprint race, the 3rd and final race of the GT Cup Championship weekend here at Snetterton, gets underway now, and away we go. And Darren Nelson anticipating the start absolutely perfectly as he takes the lead as they head into Riches from Jordan Witt. Then it is Richard Chamberlain who turns through just clear of Wayne Mars. Great start from Abby Eaton as she goes around the outside of Kevin Riley. As again, the field all cleanly through Riches. Run out a little bit wide though at Montreal. This is the golden opportunity to gain ground in these early stages. That's what the drivers are looking to do. Certainly Jordan Witt is trying to do what Darren Nelson did in the first race and break clear at the front of the field. But to do that, he's got to find a way past Nelson. Nelson will also learn plenty from early on as Rebecca Jackson comes under pressure a little bit lower down the pack. Jordan Witt arrives into Hamilton now and looks to just pick up the pace, heading towards Oggies, trying to maybe unsettle Darren Nelson into mistake as they head onto the Bentley straight. That would give Witt the golden opportunity as Nelson runs a little bit wide coming out of Oggies, and Jordan Witt looks to challenge, and he's going to dart to the inside here into Williams. He commits the move, oh, there's contact, and around goes Darren Nelson. And neither driver, I think, quite realising how quickly that gap was going to disappear. Nothing malicious in it, but unfortunately it's Darren Nelson who gets turned around, and it means that Jordan Witt takes the lead of the race and is going to try and build a lead now over Richard Chamberlain, with Wayne Mars in 3rd, David Fairbrother in 4th, and then it is Paul Bailey in 5th position. And there is Mars, through wide, put a go-go into the bomb hole. In pursuit of the Porsche of Richard Chamberlain. This has been an excellent weekend for Richard Chamberlain, an excellent weekend for Porsche as well. They currently lock out the first 2 places in the race. They've also got 4th place as well, hands of Dave Fairbrother. It's also been an excellent start to the race for Abby Eaton. She's just tucked in behind John Saunders in the Ginetta, and the pair of them are battling at the lead of the GTB group. So that could be a fight worth keeping an eye on as the race unfolds. Plumes of spray being kicked up by the leaders. It means that through the murk, the fight for 4th just has to emerge suddenly and poke out of the mist as they turn through Riches and then have that short sprint into the Montreal hairpin. We're running out very, very wide is Richard Chamberlain, but Wayne Mars unable to benefit. Possibly there's just a little bit of traction off the racing line there at Montreal. That's why we're seeing the drivers running wide, but then being able to recover quite rapidly as Saunders comes under all manner of pressure from Abby Eaton. Super scrap between the pair of them. They have then got Colin Payton just behind them in his Porsche. There is the recovering Darren Nelson, and well, the race is still young and Nelson's got plenty of time here. He gets his head down to make a fair amount of progress. Still, the GTB group fight continues. We thought that John Saunders would go well in the wet, but this is great from Abby Eaton, former MX5 champion who's made the step up to GT racing this year and has adapted very quickly to slightly different demands of the discipline as they come out of Williams. Now down the Bentley Straight, there is the race leader Jordan Witt. 2nd place remains the bright red Porsche Richard Chamberlain. 3rd is Wayne Mars. One of the Ginettas in trouble, but should rejoin. Indeed it does, as David Fairbrother is pressurised by Paul Bailey. Again, Bailey, with an eye towards the championship, doesn't want to unduly risk the car, because we're getting to that stage of the season now where points begin to equate to prizes, and therefore the last thing you want is a DNF risking a brave move on a wet day. Paul Bailey's just got to aware here, but he's at the same time being caught totally by surprise by that absolutely brilliant move from John Saunders around both of them through Coram Curve. Absolutely fantastic racing there from Saunders. Quite astonishing pass, and that is enough to elevate him into 4th place overall. Will he hold on to it though? Because he has got David Fairbrother, who powers back past him as they head along the centre straight, but then Fairbrother runs wide at Riches, and that allows Saunders to get on the throttle just a little bit earlier and gain the place. Now, does he hold it into Montreal? Indeed he does. We've got this queue of cars now, including Abby Eaton and Colin Payton, also all looking to join in. We are not too far adrift of the checker flag. Meanwhile, this is the GTA group, and a fantastic fight between Tom Hibbert and Rob Gaffney. Well, Hibbert was in the wars earlier on in the weekend as Gaffney was ratcheting up the points, but now the boot is on the other foot, and Hibbert has got it all hooked up absolutely to perfection. As the pair of them skitter through Montreal, and again taking that wide line, finding the traction. Hibbert able to accelerate away just clear of Gaffney as they head through the left-hander at Palmer, sprint along towards the hairpin at Agostini. Meanwhile, Marcus Hogarth, a bit lower down the order than he'd have perhaps liked, just tucked in behind Colin Payton. He looks to make a move to the inside of the Porsche. Porsche, though, sticks to the racing line through the bomb hole. Hogarth, the ex-Caterham racer, finds no way through the bomb hole. What about Coram Curve? No joy there either. The pair of them then arrive into Murray's. Hogarth trying to force the error from Payton. Nothing doing there, so Hogarth continues on his way. They're in pursuit of David Fairbrother, and that is a group rival for Colin Payton, not so for the GTC runner. And then we've got the Chevron just in behind them. Some great racing all the way through the field in this concluding race of the weekend, as now Hibbert is up behind Tom Webb. Now, did we just have a glimpse of Rob Gaffney? Indeed we did. So Gaffney has found a way past Hibbert and is trying to break away as we move into these late stages of the race. Adios amigos, says Rob Gaffney. Now, will that hold through to the line? Hibbert's really got to dispense of the BMW fairly rapidly. Here, though, is Jordan Witt, who has dominated these 2 wet sprint races at Snetterton, and he takes win in the open sprint race, the 3rd and final race of the weekend in the GT Cup Championship. Great stuff from Jordan Witt, and an emphatic victory over Richard Chamberlain. Let's take a look then at the results. Jordan Witt wins it and the GTC group from Richard Chamberlain. The Way Mars, an excellent 3rd, and John Saunders wins GTB with a fantastic 4th place. Overall, in GTA, Tom Hibbert did get the better of Rob Gaffney to finish in 11th, with Gaffney in 12th. So as the rain continues to team down at Snetterton, time to celebrate with the champagne on the podium.
Gets the bottle out first. Everybody else gets the faithful.
Did pretty well, and it seemed like you had quite a clear lead for quite a while. Do you think that the rain helped you? Does your car perform better in the wet, or was it all you?
No, I think it's definitely the weather. If it was dry, I don't think my car would have stood much of a chance. But with the wet, etc., it's brilliant.
Congratulations, Richard.
Thank you very much indeed. It was good fun.
And you got fastest lap as well, I believe.
Goodness knows how I managed to do that, because it was more like power boating, I think, at times.
I would have to like to thank the TCS Motorsport and Patrick Scharfliger and the boys for this car. It's a development car. We're improving it each racetrack, each race meeting, and it's fantastic.
So leaving Snetterton then, it's very close in the title race, with Paul Bailey and Andy Schultz just 9 points adrift away Mars and Charles Hollings. Paul Garth and Ingram very much in contention.
Well, some challenging weather conditions and some really exciting group battles made for some super racing here at Snetterton. Join us next time for more GT Cup action at Brands Hatch, and don't forget to stay updated via the website, Facebook and Twitter.